Only on Fox, our Arthur Mondale reports from Chicago how it began and why 81, the activist, hasn't stopped.
Civil rights was never meant to be of an era. It was designed to evolve with the culture.
And for the last 6 decades, one South Carolina native has been at the center of the nation's social evolution.
You know, there was a day and time when people were saying in the black community, "Don't make me call Jesse Jackson."
That time isn't necessarily over. Reverend Jackson is so busy on the day of our interview,
Bob, how you do, Bob?
we were interrupted a half dozen times, showing the 81-year-old has not slowed down.
I don't know what you're talking about. Country preacher from Haines Street.
Because he still has work to accomplish.
When Jesse Jackson says, "I need to see you in Chicago," you go to Chicago.
So I want to pull down the walls and build bridges.
But where were the seeds of pulling down walls and fighting for social equity first planted? Reverend Jackson says it began in West Greenville's former Sterling High School.
Achievement, advancement, and pride. It was all of that. But the content, the assumption was we would only do things for blacks. And so you learn to dream black.
A high school where he and 7 friends also learned to challenge segregation.
You either just or you bust.
What Reverend Jackson calls de facto slavery and economic robbery.
My money was counterfeited. Work was in vain.
In 1960, he and the Greenville 8, as they were called, were arrested following demonstrations against Greenville's segregated public facilities.
We were inferior by law, but we kept learning how to change it.
4 years before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 specifically outlawed discrimination and public accommodations.
You're in a box, you begin to dream that way.
And he's not a man who takes kindly to being boxed in, then or now.
Been in some of America's best jails.
A reputation and attitude held by another civil rights activist, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who Jackson befriended during the Selma to Montgomery March.
We matter. It's just so profound.
Which resulted in the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
That the fundamentals of democracy weigh on elections. So we had to have people that become legislators and public policy makers to do the necessary transformative work that Dr. King believed in.
Reverend Jackson also calls Dr. King an articulate realist, who told him that in order to build bridges in America, he would need to learn the politics of Jesus.
Jesus was about changing the world, changing individuals.
And that's how he ended up acquiring this former Chicago synagogue at 930 East 50th Street.
Chicago was the right place for the right reason, the right time.
The objective of Dr. King was to expand the civil rights movement beyond the borders of the South.
The halls and walls of Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters show it. We got a tour from Acting National Executive Director Bishop Tavis Grant.
There's a lot of history made in this building. He was a lieutenant for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and moved here in Chicago. And so this really helps us kind of chronicle the work.
Bishop Grant says his work with the Greenville 8 is where Reverend Jackson got infected with a social justice passion. And it's so alive today, Rainbow Push operates 24/7.
If they need a lawyer, they need representation, if they need medical assistance, they have a housing issue, an employment issue, they still believe that Jesse Jackson can make a difference.
And he's helping find representation for the families of people like Justin Blake and Ahmaud Arbery, and other names in the news across the nation.
And still today, he's a source to be contended with.
So when people ask, is Rainbow Push Coalition still relevant? You say,
yes. As Reverend Jackson would say, to have a more even playing field means that we have to accept the challenge to not just be on this corner, but as many corners as we can around this country.
A global human rights figure leading an institution of its own, not shy about uprooting America's systemic 21st century problems.
We should have life and life abundantly. To have life first.
Adding the slogan, "Keep Hope Alive," and the push for equity is still just as relevant as the day his much younger self entered the fight.
I want God to say, well done.
It's more relevant today than ever before.
Relevant, accessible, and reminding the public why he is still somebody. Arthur Mondale, Fox, Carolina News.
Well, today the Rainbow Push Coalition has offices in 6 cities across the nation, and a new Houston office is set to open this August.